Some years ago, I was invited to a dinner party, a very hoi polloi, upmarket dinner party. Not my kind of thing, really. Wasn't then. I was about 35 at the time, and I'm a lot older than that now. And I was invited by a guy who's a similar age to me, that I like quite a lot. And it was his father that was hosting the party. Now, the people who attended, about a dozen of them, were all fairly wealthy types. And typically business people of one kind or another. And as the party, I mean, you know, they call it a dinner party, all you do is basically sit around a fucking table and eat stuff, and talk about shit. Because this was in England, you have to remember. The English are masters of small talk. Nobody does small talk like the English. In fact, I was once in Amsterdam for a conference. I was actually the guy speaking at the conference. And there were some Dutch people there, and I got talking. And the Dutch are not so keen on small talk. They're fairly direct people. And one of them said, "Oh, you English are really, really masters of small talk, aren't you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, we are." And they picked up a few phrases that the English use, almost like robots. You know, it comes out. One of them is, "Oh, really? How interesting." So if somebody's telling you about their whitewater rafting holiday in Peru, as someone was at this party, you say, "Oh, really? How interesting." Of course, you're not the least bit interested. But this is the acquisition of social skills. Or as Nietzsche would say, the art of deception. The honest response to them would have been, "I'm not the least bit fucking interested in what you're talking about. Can you talk about something that is of interest to me if you want to talk to me?" Anyway, so one of them was, "Oh, really? How interesting." So please remember that if you want to be seen as socially skilled and acquire an English accent, you know, when somebody's telling you about some boring drivel, then all you have to do is say to them, "Oh, really? How interesting." The other one that they mentioned, these Dutch people, is absolutely. So someone's telling you about how unemployed people shouldn't get any support. Absolutely. Of course, there are a lot of people in business who think that. They think that because they've done modestly well in business, that they are somehow very special people. The fact that business is largely down to luck and a modicum of intelligence, in fact, just the average intelligence, is something they overlook. And because they've been in the right place at the right time with the right thing, which was no design of theirs, they decide that they are superior people. So when you hear one of these braggadocios going on, "Oh, I've got this wonderful new Porsche. It goes like a rocket." Absolutely. So there's another one you can use. Whenever you encounter people in some kind of semi-posh situation. So I found that quite interesting that the Dutch understand very well the English skill at small talk, at social skills, this acquired social skill, the art of deception. Now, I started with talking about this dinner party. So this dinner party went on for about an hour and a half. Whitewater rafting holidays in Peru. Oh, really? How interesting. I think that the economy would do much better if the government would cut taxes. Absolutely. So an hour and a half of this, I got kind of sick of it. One of the people there was actually a surgeon. A very wealthy guy. I think he maybe was a plastic surgeon or something. And I got tired of all that, and so I thought I'd ask this guy a question. I said, in your profession you must see quite a lot of death. The table went utterly and totally quiet. Embarrassed faces everywhere. You could have heard a pin drop. And the host of the party, this guy's father, suddenly said, "Oh, would anybody like any more sherry or whatever it was, souffle?" And somebody shouted out, "Absolutely!" So anyway, this kind of went along. I'd obviously embarrassed the host somewhat by asking a question that was a real question for me. People who are surgeons must see death now and then. I wondered how it affected them, but of course this is a taboo question. Anyway, after this dinner party, this guy that I knew said, "My father said you have no social skills whatsoever." Which wasn't true. I do have social skills. I was in business for 30 years, and you can't get by in business without bullshitting. But I chose on this occasion not to have them because I was bored, and I didn't value the company of these people at all. It was only because I knew this guy that I'd gone along. So anyway, I didn't get invited to any more of these dinner parties, which were quite a regular thing apparently. So that's dinner parties and social skills. So in that kind of setting, and I'm only picking one out, there are lots of them. So if you're in a bar, there will be things you can talk about and things you cannot talk about. If you're in the gym, there are things you can talk about and things you can't talk about. These modes of behavior are called social skills. It's the art of deception. Pretending that you're interested in things that you're not interested in because you hope to get something out of it. When you say to somebody, "Oh really, how interesting," is because you want their approval in some way. I didn't want any approval from those people, so I was quite happy to be a skunk at the party for a while. Anyway, so that's dinner parties. You see it with business people. I happened to go to an upmarket food store this morning. In fact, it was the kind of inspiration for this podcast. And there were two guys. This upmarket food store is in an upmarket place, lots of golfers, all that kind of thing. And there were two guys dressed in their Gant shorts and their golfing t-shirts who recognized each other. "Hello, Jeffrey. Hello, Ron. How are you?" Blah, blah, blah. They didn't even look at each other. They'd recognized each other, but as soon as they kind of recognized each other, they treated each other with a certain amount of disdain. There was a power play going on. "How are you?" "I'm absolutely wonderful. How are you?" "Oh, brilliant. Had a wonderful round of golf yesterday." And this went on, not looking at each other. One was looking at the bread counter, another one was looking at some meats or something. Anyway, very, very busy, got to go. And the other one, of course, saying that you're busy means that you have this wonderful life that is full of exciting stuff and you're far more important in it than the other guy who isn't busy. But the other guy replied, "Yes, busy, 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 must get on." And you should, typically these people are fairly senior in medium to large organizations. And they're just playing a little power game. But again, it's called a social skill. In business, as Taleb says, business people are the dullest people on earth. If you want an evening that is dull as ditch water, then spend the evening with business people. They'll be talking about golf, maybe rugby, maybe wines, maybe food, never sex really, never death, never their gallbladder that needs taking out or their prostate that needs enlarging or something. Because, of course, these people in their workaday environment are totally inhibited. The business environment is a very, very strictly controlled environment in terms of social skills. So you cannot talk about anything meaningful, and your work is dull and boring. Senior people in large organizations do not do anything exciting. I've been around them, I've been with them. There's this notion that they are high-powered, high-intelligence characters. They are not. They're riding on the back of a whole load of blag and social skills, and maybe contacts and social capital. So their days are as dull as ditch water. Now, these people are no different from you and I. They have something real inside them, like maybe a shriveled up thing like a little walnut, but they do have something real inside of them, and it gets no expression. So what do? Well, out of hours, they will, and I've known some people like this, they will indulge in fairly bizarre sexual practices. Because the beast has to come out somewhere. And so it comes out in sort of really wacky sexual stuff. It will come out in maybe binge drinking. Alcohol's a very big thing with a lot of big business people. Because they're so unhappy, actually, although they can't admit that. They're so unhappy, they're so inhibited, that alcohol has to provide them with some means of relief from their prison that they've made. So, dinner parties, business people. Possibly the worst of the lot is spiritual people. So-called spiritual people. Still to understand what this word spiritual means. Of the spirit. Well, what the fuck is a spirit? Anyway, if you go to any or get involved with any kind of spiritual group or whatever, you'll find that there are very, very strict modes of behavior, things that you can say that are acceptable and things you cannot say. Exactly the same as the dinner party, exactly the same as the business environment. There's nothing spiritual going on there in truth with spiritual people, whatever that means. They have their own set of conditioning and so-called social skills that they have to acquire. So, for example, I was involved in the Gurdjieff work for a long time, and there's real value there, without a doubt. But many of the people, and this is particularly true in London, I was involved with a London group for a long time, they adopt what is called the work face. So, in the Gurdjieff movement, the practices they adopt and the things they do is called the work, not a work, or not just work, it's the work, which of course implies there's no other kind of work. And they use this kind of the thing quite a lot. So, the tales, which is called Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson. And various other things, which I can't remember off the top of my head. So there's a kind of elitism and phony superiority that you'll find in that kind of environment. One of the things that was actually commented on by some of the people involved with various groups was what was called the work face. The work face was basically a dour expression where you didn't look at anybody and you did not acknowledge anybody. You could have been on the street of London, or the streets of London, where you never dare look at anybody. If you smiled at somebody, they'd probably call the anti-terrorist police or something. They think you're insane. If you live in London or a big city, you probably experienced that. These are social skills. Do not look at anybody when you're in the streets in London. Do not have a smile on your face if you're involved in the Gurdjieff work. It means that you're not one of these kind of pompous asses that thinks that it's part of some elitist group. Because of course a smile denotes a certain kind of levity, and yeah, there was typically no levity in the Gurdjieff work. Very self-serious people. Of course, all this I've picked out the Gurdjieff work there. It's the same with anything. I've seen it in other groups. You need to adopt a certain set of social skills to fit in. So why do we do it? Why do we tame our inner beast? Why do we put it into a cage? This gold glittery cage that is called social skills. Well, we do it because we want to be accepted as part of the herd. Whether it's the Gurdjieff group or whether it's a dinner party, it's basically the desire to be accepted within some kind of herd setting. Depending on the herd, you will acquire the relevant social skills to do that. And why do we want to fit in? Well, the thing I'm always talking about. We want to fit in because we want to survive. We believe that to be part of the herd is to be in a safer situation than to be outside the herd, any herd. So, what is the alternative to all of this? Well, the alternative is aloneness. When I use the word aloneness, in preference to loneliness. Loneliness is something different. Of course, to get through life, you have to act. So, at the dinner party, I could have acted all evening, just to keep everybody happy. Oh, really? How interesting? Absolutely. But I didn't want to. I didn't want anything from these people. Maybe if they were people who were offering me a 500 grand contract or something, I might have said absolutely and how interesting all evening. But they weren't. They were just boring. So we have to do that in life, but it's acting. Never believe in it. Never believe in your social role. It's something separate to what you are. Loneliness is something quite different. Loneliness is basically a feeling of lack. Aloneness can be quite a fulfilling sense. Loneliness is when we have no social contact. And we are social animals at the end of the day, to some extent anyway. And if you're not getting any kind of contact with people, you will feel loneliness. And there's a lot of loneliness in the world. People who are excluded from all the social groups, whether they're so-called spiritual groups or whatever. The bottom line in all of this can be summarized in about 3 lines, which I could have said at the beginning, but you wouldn't have got any context for it. You have to act in life. Absolutely. I can hear you saying. You have to act in life. You have to remember not to buy in to all the bullshit and the phony stuff. It is contagious, unfortunately. So there's a conscious act required on your part to remember it's just acting and that you're doing it for a particular reason. If there's no benefit to you to do the acting, then don't do it. Or everybody else is acting. They're not being sincere or genuine with you. Nobody's interested in you unless they're going to get something out of you in some way. That's the horrible truth of this situation. So ultimately, you are on your own. Take responsibility for yourself. Act when acting is needed to further your own ends. Otherwise, don't act. And it's the same with so-called spiritual stuff or whatever. If you have to act because you believe there's something of value for you, then act, as indeed I did. But if there's nothing of value for you, then don't act. There are times in the Gurdjieff work I didn't act. I didn't want to do the work face. I remember once they were talking about some summer retreat, and I just said to them, because the summer retreats are treated as a very special kind of thing, and the conditioning is even heavier. So I just said to the guy who was organising it all, I said, it just sounds like a boot camp to me. I don't want to go to something like that. He was pretty angry about that, but fuck him. I didn't want to go anyway. So ultimately you are on your own. Take responsibility for yourself, which requires courage, and don't buy any of the bullshit.